Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday night. It's me, Sarah Marks, and welcome to another week of live writing and probably another quiet week. So here we are. It's February. It's a romantic month. New Devil is done. It's off the table for at least a month while my editor reviews it. So far, she's sending some feedback. She's enjoying it, which is encouraging and probably the most important feedback for me is that somebody's enjoying the story and knowing that she is enjoying it, but will come back with critiques that will be constructive is helpful. Unraveling Carrie Woodhouse is still with its editor. She had 2 months with it because, she has more time with it, just the way it worked out. She wanted 2 months, I gave her 2 months. So, that still has another month with her. It'll be a really busy March, which means that when I do these live streams, I'll probably be editing one of those 2 works next month. But this month, we're addressing published books. If you did these live streams before January with me, and I think I only did a couple of them, I talked about Modern Persuasion and my 21st Century Austen series. And for those of you who don't know, this is the first book in my Chicklet series. And when I wrote it, it was a really fast write, and I felt really positive about it. Sent it to a publisher to see if they were interested, and it was this tiny little brand new publisher, but lo and behold, they wanted to publish it. And it was a very encouraging experience. But I trusted them to make decisions on how to edit it. And when I got the draft back a month before they were scheduled to publish it, they returned the rights to me when they closed. They had done nothing with it and were probably going to publish it as it was, which was very discouraging. But I had some friends read it, give me some feedback, and made the decision to publish it with that level of editing. But since then, even though it gets good reviews and it does good sales, I have wanted to work on it. There's a lot of things I wanted to bring in. One, recognizing that the whole series is very much chicklet, but this is one of the books where it's not so much focused on the main character's, Emma's, journey. So I needed some tightening up there. There's other work that can be done. Things can be expanded, getting a little more in her head, knowing what she's thinking, clearing up some dialogue and things like that. But it hasn't been something I've been able to do, except this year, as I am focused primarily on editing and creating content to connect everything together in all of my books and all of my series across all of my pen names. All 2 of them, don't worry if you think there's more than 2, not yet. Doing all this work to help this be a more engaging series for readers means I can focus on this book for the first time in a while. Coming back to it has been a delight. I love Emma. I love Frederick. They're 2 of my favorite. They've been my favorite couple for a very long time. And as much as I enjoy the couples as I write them, like I loved Katie and Ethan when I was writing them for Northanger Parks. And I love Amelia and Adam, and I love Carrie and Zach for Unraveling Carrie Woodhouse. And who cannot love Mr. Darcy, no matter where he is in a book. I love them, but Emma and Frederick are always 2 that stick in my head. And then as I have learned that writing is partially an avoidance tool for me, if I want to avoid something, I just write. Writing this again is an avoidance of other things. So here we are, February, the month of love. We're going to address Modern Persuasion. Last time when we addressed this, I think I got into chapter 5. I can't remember, and that's the problem. I can't precisely remember where I left off. I had shut down the tab when January started, knowing that I was going to jump feet first into Help Wanted New Devil, but now I have to come back to this. And my notes say I finished chapter 5, but I was looking at the end of chapter 5 earlier today and realized, no, I don't think I did finish that. So today we're going to do probably about 3 to 4 sprints, 10 minutes each, of me just probably working through chapter 5, maybe into chapter 6. I might not make much progress on this for a couple weeks. I'm hoping to get some quiet time when we have a long weekend. I keep thinking I'm gonna have quiet time on snow days, but my work life has changed a bit, and there's a little chaos that happens on snow days when you have to communicate things with people. So, I'm not getting the quiet writing time I always think I'm gonna get, and knowing that I really do kind of flourish under a very tight deadline means that I might allow myself the wiggle room to not deal with this in depth until the end of February. And then I'll just sort of plow through the rest in like one weekend. But who knows if that's going to happen or not? Maybe I'll actually behave differently than I always behave, which is highly unlikely. Another thing I'm doing, and I started showing this to everybody with the other book, but I have this plotting journal that's based on Sarah Cannon's Heart Breathing channel. She has these plotting journals that she does with Happy Planner, classic size. And I've been trying to model that as a way to get my head around the series, the future of the series. I do know where this series is going and where it ends. And as we launch into the second half of it with Unraveling Carrie Woodhouse, it is helpful to revisit the past books to see if there are characters I want to pull forward. There are. And if there are themes that I want to revisit when I do the second round for each book, there are. And getting into Modern Persuasion is going to help me remember what those were and who the character is that I want to pull forward. And when we get to her in this work, I might mention what her plans are just a little bit. So I might take notes as I go. I might just keep working as this happens over these sprints. But I think tonight we'll talk a bit about after between sprints, I'll talk about what I did and the changes I'm making and why, so that you can get a deeper look at what goes on when you're writing and editing, let alone when you have the opportunity to revise and re-edit something you've already published. And this is something unique to self-publishing. But we'll talk about what that means on the flip end of this first sprint. It's going to be 10 minutes, and let's see if I don't know if it lets me. Yeah, it won't let me add in another window, but let's do it this way. It doesn't let you share multiple windows at a time. So I'm going to keep up the timer window while I'm working so that you can watch the time tick down instead of watching me on the manuscript. And if you're actually in the chat and watching this and you don't like it, put a message in the chat, let me know so that maybe next time I do a sprint, I'll change it. But we're going to start the timer now, and I'm going to mute myself. And from there, we will keep moving forward. All right, I let that one go on a little longer because I finished the chapter. It turned out I was a little correct and a little incorrect about what I had done. And in fact, I had gotten through most of chapter 5, but had not finished it when I stopped working. So I finished this chapter expanding more on the history. So this scene is at PubCon, which is the primary part of Act 1. It's setting up that Act 1 is really the setup act. It's when people are introduced, characters, drama, needs, wants, conflict, everything is introduced in Act 1. So it's at PubCon for this book, which is where the publishing company's annual conference happens. It was Book Expo, but I changed the name because Book Expo used to be a thing and now it isn't anymore. And I'm not going to change it back because now it exists and it's been published forever. Um, so she is increasingly forced to interact with Frederick, her ex, who she broke up with 8 years ago and who is still very angry. And one thing I was working on earlier in this month, later in January, when I was still trying to avoid New Devil, was a sort of short novelette that talked about Frederick before this book began, why he's decided to publish this specific book at this specific time with this publishing company of all publishing companies, because he knows where she works. He knows to expect her. And he talks about that in his chunk of Modern Persuasion, that he was expecting to see her. So why does he make this decision at this time? And this explores it, especially because there are little details as we get into Act 2, which is his book tour, that that really that really never get picked up and dealt with because there's no real context for it. There's just this ex-girlfriend that he is no longer with and who is feeling very possessive, and I had to deal with why and the background between them and why they even broke up if she's still into him. There are reasons, and that has to be explored. But also, what I've been writing is getting a little clarity on the publishing company structure, why Emma works for a company when her father was a publisher and he sold the company to them. And so trying to give people a better sense of the dynamic in this group, that um that she has reasons for the way things are. There are reasons for the way things are. Her and Karen's dynamic is the way things are. There are reasons for all of that. So I wanted to clarify that in this chapter. The next chapter in the book takes us into the continued forced interaction between the two of them. So if you've read the original Persuasion, Jane Austen's original Persuasion, um, Emma's father has moved out of their family home. They've rented it out because he needs the money and he's living in a cheaper place in Bath. But the family that has moved into the house is Frederick's sister and her husband. So Frederick has come and he has met Mary's in-laws. Mary is Anne, and Elliot is the original character, Emma. But Mary is Anne's and thus Emma's sister. So in this one, Mary is at PubCon because Mary must be included in everything. She is so used to being ignored in this world that she fights to get included, and her husband loves her and tolerates it, but at the same time, it makes her push. And in this portion of the original, they're spending all this time together at Mary's house, at Mary's in-laws' home, and it's tense. It's super tense. Act 2 for the original book takes them on a trip. So they depart the in-laws' house and they go on on the trip that will take them to Lyme, where Louisa will eventually get injured and all that happens. But I wanted to focus on the fact that Louisa keeps bringing Louisa, who is in this book Mary's sister-in-law, just like she's in the original, she keeps bringing Frederick into things. So this is where I have to work now with this interaction, the fact that they have to have dinner together, or spend time together just outside of this conference, that she has gone from never thinking about him, never having seen him since they graduated, to he is constantly in her face and she can't get rid of him no matter how hard she tries, because Louisa, of all people, is there to support him throughout this entire week because he is publishing a book with her publisher. So that is where chapter 6 will take us. Um, so I don't think we're gonna get to it today, but there's a couple things I've been working on, aside from the Frederick version of the story and the lead up to it, which has been fun because he's not necessarily in the best headspace. And the working title of the story is Frederick's Healthy Coping Mechanisms, which is the fact that if you've read this book, he has very poor coping mechanisms. He drinks and he smokes pot, and he thinks he's coping and he's not. And as much as he tries to do this in this little prequel novella, he doesn't. The healthy coping mechanism is submitting the book to a publisher 8 years after Emma edited it and he wrote it, and he put it away thinking he'd never think of it again. He pulls it out and he does that. But the preemptive action was, um, years ago for an event, I created these bad dates with Jane Austen heroes. And it was just a quick blurb about how terrible a date might be with one of these guys. And it got me thinking about some potential bonus content for VIP readers on my mailing list, or maybe giveaways to Patreon subscribers, or even if I do a Kickstarter campaign at one point, and that will be to have a personalized bad date with one of my heroes, my modernized heroes. And what would a really bad date be with Frederick? And they have to be bad dates. They can't be good. You can't end up in love and having your happily ever after with him, because then the book doesn't happen. So these all happen pre-book. And I only got through Frederick's before I got distracted by, well, NaNoWriMo at that point. This was back in October. And Frederick State is somebody has won a date with him because he's famous, and there was a competition for something that was going on for charity, and she wins, and she's flown out, and she spends the day with him, and it's really boring because he takes her to work and then he gets drunk at dinner and he rants and rants about first the ex-girlfriend that he just broke up with, and then he rants about Emma, and she has to put him into a cab and send him home uh because he's so friggin' drunk, and it's just a disaster. And of course he sends her like a bouquet of sunflower, that he pays attention to what people like, so he sends her flowers that she loves, and there's room for personalization in all of this, because it would be personalized for every person who chooses this as a giveaway or a prize or something like that. But it would be like a Mad Lib short date. And it was fun, and I realized, that's the prompt. That's the prompt that takes us into the novella. So it does get mentioned, and I was having fun with it, but that's when I, of course, realized there's a little more work to do here than I thought. But um, that is what it is. We're gonna do another 10 minutes, and from there, I'm gonna work on chapter 6, and maybe I can get through chapter 6 tonight. And if I do, yay, that's a nice thing taken off my calendar, because I probably won't get back to this until next weekend. And who knows what next weekend's going to be like. It's Valentine's Day. We will do a live stream next Sunday, though. Don't worry. So I'm going to start the timer. This time I'm going to let you see, um, if you want, if see the actual editing doesn't really make a difference. You'll hear the time. Well, I'll hear the timer, but it's going to be another 10 minutes. All right, so I got a little bit done. One of the um, one of the things in the very first draft of the book, one thing I never really did was explain why Emma or Christy at this point in the story was even going on a book tour with Frederick, because this doesn't happen. Publishers don't send editors. Uh, Publicists go on book tours with authors, and that's assuming the author is important enough to have a publicist. Most of the time, the author just goes to bookstores that they're told to go to, and the advance that they have been given, if they're big enough, will be used to pay for that travel, or there might be a budget from the publisher to pay for that travel. Somehow or another, they'll get that money back. That's how it works. But in this case, there is something going on behind the scenes, and it's subtle in the first drafts of the book, and I'm going to start pulling them out a little more. The fact that um, when Frederick first submitted this manuscript, he sent it to Karen, and Karen passed on it, but somehow it ends up in Christie's hands, and Christie takes the chance. And when the higher ups find out that Karen has passed on this, and she has passed on other books that have been huge successes, they're worried that she's costing them money, or at least not bringing in money. And he's a celebrity. They want to entice him to do more because he's already had great pre-sales. So they're babysitting him. Uh, but when what is going to happen happens, which is Christie's accident the next day, there's even more anxiety from the executives of the publishing company, which is why Emma is then really punished. They're punishing Karen, they're punishing Emma, so that they know to not pass on people like Frederick in the future. Um, so that's where we are. We're having dinner together. And of course, I'm adding in gestures and scene setting so that people know what's going on and what the scene looks like. Um, so I'm going to do another 10 minutes from here, and then we'll see where we are and probably wrap up after that. All right. So they're at dinner, which is most of this chapter is this interaction with dinner and explaining how book tours work and why they're boring and setting up this idea that the main drive of this book tour that's coming is there's not going to be a lot of scenes at the bookstore stops because they're quite boring. It's going to be the tension between Emma and Frederick in key cities, in primarily in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, the three cities that she lives in, he lives in, and they lived in together. So when I rush through later scenes of the Boston stop, the Washington D.C. stop, the Georgia stop, they're not going to be important because they're not important to there's nothing going on there. This is boring and Luis is going to be bored. But things will change once they get to LA especially. And I'm almost done with this chapter, so I am probably going to wrap things up on my own for this chapter after the stream is over. But it's in a good spot. I'm very happy with it. And I think that I might need a proofreader when this is all done just to catch things that I'm catching, like extra periods, uh, no periods. As this was edited over and over again, there is a sense that it needs a little bit more of a it needs a second look before it gets republished. So what's the plan for this? Um, right now, and more news is going to come out about this in the next few weeks. Um, all the books in the Austen series are getting brand new covers. So this cover is going away from Modern Persuasion. The newsletter people have heard this news, but it'll be increasingly shared on social media. There are books getting new titles. Phi Alpha Pi, the Pride and Prejudice modernization is getting changed to Pride and Prejudice and Publishing. And then Woodhouse Hall is now going to be Love and War at Woodhouse Hall or in Woodhouse Hall. I can't remember. The book cover designer knows. Northanger Parks is being changed to Love from Northanger Parks, comma Katie, the way you might sign a postcard, the back of a postcard. And I'm gonna have some fun with that and the original cover of the book because I love Jess's design for that book. In fact, Phi Alpha Pi, Woodhouse Hall, and Northanger Park original covers are going to become book art that people will be able to buy postcards of. Like I will autograph the back of the postcard. I might have the characters do the postcard. It we'll see. But I'm gonna have some fun with that so that this art, which was which was money well spent at the time, but now is no longer needed, does get some use amongst readers, especially because I suspect that the audiobooks are going to be the most difficult to update across the board simply because the audiobook narrators aren't going to be all that interested in redoing things. It's complicated the way things work. But book covers coming this month. When the new Modern Persuasion cover gets loaded, hopefully I'll be done with this edit and the new edition will go right up with it. And that's when some big stuff will happen. If you have been following me on social media or you're on my newsletter list and you're rewatching this, because I think anybody who watches it's going to be rewatching it. Um, you can buy the original paperbacks at 50% off right now. They are all autographed. I will ship to anybody in the US, and they're going to be this way all month. There will be reminders posted on Facebook and Instagram more than any place else. So if you never got paperbacks of those books, you can get them. I will also have them at events this month. I am ready for a drink of water and dinner. But that's it. That's the end of our hour. I'll see you all next week. Maybe I'll have made some progress. Maybe I will not have made any progress. I don't know. But until then, oh, and if you saw my social media post last night, you'll know I bought a little new friend. He's Ghostan. He's a little ghost, ceramic ghost. It's a Halloween Valentine's Day mashup because, that's kind of my jam. And he's going to join me on the little shelf spot for a little while because he's super cute. He might have a permanent spot there with the unicorns and the sheep, and that you can't really see it, but there's like a whole little menagerie on my bookshelf behind me. So that's it. I will see you all next week and enjoy rewatching this. And give it a like and a thumbs up and subscribe and ring the bell and all the things that YouTube reminds you to do so that more people find out about this.